Okay, my talk for today is on mysticism. But before I begin, a joke. Short and simple one. What did the snail say as he's riding on the back of the turtle? Whee! Perspective. Mysticism. You know, I have to tell you that my relationship to science of mind is through mysticism. And what I have learned more than anything about mysticism is nothing gets in the way of it more than logic. The more logical you are, the harder it is to see beyond the veil, to see what it is I want to bring to you week after week, day after day. Because we can have an incredibly good life walking in a way that is very logical in the world. So this isn't about creating a great life. You can do that without mysticism. You can learn a good portion of science of mind without mysticism. But to get to the greater miracles, the greater adventure, the awe-inspiringness that is actually possible, you must be willing to put your rational mind aside. Now, given that science of mind is called science of mind, it doesn't even lead you with its title to the power that is actually possible there. First off, no matter what philosophy you follow, the first step is always controlling your thoughts. If you want to reach that place where you change the conditions of your life, you must first be able to control the thoughts you are having. And science of mind is great at teaching you how to control your thoughts. It's great at that. And through controlling your thoughts, you begin to shift your conditions. And through shifting your conditions, the quality of your life gets better and better and better. So there's nothing bad about that. But to my mind, it is a beginner way of being. It is only the tip of the iceberg. So many of the things that happen in my life happen because I am willing to go out beyond the physical, challenge what I believe to be so, and allow for the infinite possibilities that are within and without to arise. But to do that, you've got to put your rational mind aside. Because as long as you look at life rationally, you are missing an entire world, an entire universe, an entire way of being that is beyond all of it. You know, I watch the news every day, read the news. Don't really watch it as much as read the news every single day. That is part of my routine, is to find out what's going on in the world. But what I do with that, what I think about that, is always from a perspective, always would be wrong. Because I am not a master at this. just so we're clear, I am still a practitioner. So I do not come to you saying, I know this, how to do this all the time. I always want to make that clear. But when I remember, I look at the news and I remember that higher perspective. The biggest lesson I take from our president catching COVID is what you resist persists. This is a great example for our country of what you resist persists. In his denial, he actually drew this to him, which is what we are all doing. He's not doing anything bigger, worse, or different than any of us. He's just so public that it makes for this great example of how our teaching works. That then we can look at our own lives and say, what am I resisting? What am I resisting in my own life that is getting in my way of the mystical, that is getting in my way of the miraculous, that is getting in my way of seeing beyond the veil, of seeing beyond what is actually possible, and then experiencing that in my daily life? Because my talk today is really about day-to-day mysticism. It's not about every once in a while having a ceremony and then the rest of the time living like a regular, normal person would live. I'm actually asking you to put your regular, normal self aside as often as you possibly can. Somebody here is unmuted. There we go. So in this process, for myself, I've told you lots and lots of stories around how I've walked across fire many times, how I have quested in the Mexican desert for 4 days and 4 nights with no food and water, how I have done a Native American death ceremony. These things weren't for fun. No, they were. They were to give me the experience of beyond the veil. There was a time in our history when rites of passage were built on the idea that they were to give you a chance to move through the veil into something new, that you would never be the same. They've changed in today's world into simply symbolisms, symbolic gestures of what used to be real, a real experience of, oh my God, how can this be happening? Oh my God, this is really real. And so in the abstract, we have actually lost touch with what is actually possible. I can't tell you the amount of practitioners I have talked to, science of mind practitioners, that said something like, walking across fire changes you. And them saying, I'm never doing that. In their fear to do something like that, they are denying the actual thing they say they're treating about. In anyone's fear to take on something, the fear itself isn't the issue, because we all have fear. Trust me. First time I walked across fire, the second time, even the fourth or fifth time, I had fear. Not anymore, but when we can put our logical mind aside, we then have a possibility for something greater. And when we put our logical mind aside, normally the fear goes with it. That's the beauty of it all. But you can't just put your logical mind aside and not have something else to hold on to. There are teachers of the science of mind who will teach you how to control your thoughts, which is the basic principle of science of mind. Taking a thought that is negative, that is not working for you, putting it aside, and instead replacing it with a thought that will feed you to a level where you can embody that new thought and have something different show up in your life. That is the heart of science of mind. Controlling your mind, not controlling circumstances. That happens as a given once you have controlled your mind. But controlling your mind comes first. And so we work at that, us practitioners, controlling our mind. When we have fear, reminding ourselves what the truth is about being powerful, creative, spiritual beings. Coming up with pictures, mental equivalents, so that we can hold those pictures in our mind of what it is we want to create. When there are other thoughts flooding and running through our heads that want to knock out that picture and help and stop us from creating what it is we actually want. Or worse, creating something we don't want because our fear is so strong. The thing is, as hard as that is, and it is hard and takes years and years of practice, it's still only the first step. It's still only the beginning of what's actually possible in our lives. This is why meditation is so important. Because once we have learned to control our thoughts, listening, watching, opening to what is greater and beyond anything we could have ever considered becomes possible. Opening, watching, letting go of anything that gets in the way of having the experience of something that is beyond our own ability to understand. That's where the true mystic and mysticism lies. There, in the unknown. There, in the pureness of spirit. There, in the beauty of true life. A logical mind cannot make sense of that. And yet, when we try to use our logical mind to make sense of something that is beyond logic, we limit what is possible. We diminish that which is great. By wanting to understand in a way that makes sense in our logical minds, we limit the infinite, where in fact we have the capacity, when we let go of that logic, to embrace the infinite, to embrace something that is so much larger than ourselves. I am here to share with you this largeness, this magnificence that is truly possible for you. Yes, the first steps are important. Yes, take the Science of Mind classes because they will help you to understand and to gain the capacity to control your rational mind. You want to do that. It's important. It's important to learn that you have the capability of taking any thought or fear or anything going on within you, putting it aside for something that is larger that you want. Something that you want, something you have the mental equivalent of. And thus begin the process of watching your outward conditions shift. That's important. And I highly recommend doing it. I'm simply saying that don't stop there. If you feel you have gotten your life to a place where it's working, where things are beginning to flow, you have reached a place to where you can now move on to something greater. It's scary. I'm not saying it's not. I have many times in my life walked into the unknown, not having a clue what would happen next. I've talked about all the ones, I think, at different weeks here. I've been practicing the mystic way of living for decades now. And it has led me and continues to lead me, because it is clear to me that my life isn't over and there's more still to unfold. But once I reach the ability to create through mental equivalence, through putting aside my thoughts and allowing me to bring in the new thoughts I wanted, I realized that just letting go of all of that, now that I could put all that aside, I could open and simply listen and watch to something greater going on. And in doing so, have opened to a life that is actually beyond any mental equivalent I could have ever thought up. Beyond anything that I could have imagined. And continue to allow that to unfold. That's the true possibility here. To allow ourselves to open to something greater. So when I look at the news, I see it through the eyes, again, not all the time, still working on it, but when I can, through the eyes of a mystic, through the eyes of mysticism. I see these events as something, as the learning tools they are. For me, for all of us. There is something greater going on than anything in the drama that is COVID. There is so many incredible mystical lessons to be learned in the drama that is COVID. For those of us who have looked at it that way, have taken it on that way. If you haven't yet, you still can. It is obvious that COVID is not over. You still have the ability to open to the greater source here and see beyond the veil of what's truly possible for all of us. I have listened to so many people speak of the blessing of cancer, speak of the blessing of a lost one, speak of the blessing of the biggest tragedies in their lives. That is impossible without seeing beyond the veil. That is impossible without going beyond what we think is possible, embracing the infinite, opening to the mystic. Open to the mystic. That is what is here for us in every moment of our lives. Take time every day to listen, to open. Keep practicing as I do, controlling your thoughts, because that's the first step and is really what allows the rest to happen. Science of mind is great for controlling our thoughts. When it comes to true embodiment, letting it in, feeling it in our hearts, to allow our hearts to lead the way means putting our logical mind aside. Listening to something deeper, because your heart is speaking to you. Your greater self is speaking to you. It wants you to know how magnificent you are. It wants you to know what a divine, infinite being you are. It wants to lead you to possibilities that you may have never dreamed possible. Open to that which is possible. Open to that which is beyond your imagination. Be the mystic. It's worth living for. I love you. Thank you.
God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.